DGen Nation fam, what is up? What is happening? It's the DGen Nation podcast coming at you live here for the Week 14 main slate breakdown. Let's get it, guys. Man, rocking with us. Week 14. I can't believe we are here, but here we are. And as Cooper Kupp just scores the touchdown there on the Slate Patriots, getting rolled on like they do with the Chargers. But I digress. Ryan Williams here at Ryan Alexander _W is where you can find me on Twitter, joined by the usual suspects, my guys, Matty DFS at Matty DFS on Twitter, Matty 2v2, Matty Buckets, and the Godfather himself, Mr. Kevin Steele at Fantasy Raf 13. Fellas, how we doing here for the Week 14 slate?
I'm good. I think that this slate is absolutely wild, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Matty, this one wild too? You be saying that every week. What's going on?
No. Last week was pretty straightforward. I told you guys. I sat here and told you guys. I told the followers, the listeners. I said stack Tennessee and Cleveland. Do it. What do you know? 80 combined points. And
my God!
There's another game this week that I'm going to sit here and tell you stack this game. And you guys aren't going to listen. You guys are going to no. I'd rather stack this other game that's way more popular.
What about that Derek Carr girl dad narrative though?
No, yeah, that hit a lot of Derek Carr winning teams to Darren Waller stacks. I had a pretty good weekend. I had 0 Darren Waller, but yet all of my teams cashed somehow. I had I had Corey Davis everywhere. He smashed. Yeah. He was like my favorite play on the slate. I had a ton of Devontae Adams. I paid up for him instead of the running backs. So, my roster construction worked out. I thought last week was pretty straightforward. I got burned by the Raiders, but I think this week is insane with how many different ways you can go. It's a wild slate. We'll talk about it.
Kev, how you feeling? You sharing those same sentiments as Matty is, or not so much?
I fucking love this slate. Like, I am excited about it. We hadn't even hit lock for Sunday of last week, and I was excited about this week. So
that's just normal though. That's run of the mill for you.
Well, I'm always looking ahead. I'm always looking to see what it is. I hated last week. Like, I was not really all that excited about that slate. Like, the more and more I looked at it, I wasn't really excited about a lot of the builds and everything else I made. And like, I was really questioning myself, especially Saturday. Like, man, maybe I should just back off here and just play light, because I just did not like the slate at all. And sure enough, it was for good reason, because I fucking hated the slate. Even though I had 2 or 3 Carr and Waller stacks, and still that it wasn't a very good day. But we're back again, and I am really, really excited about this week. There's so many good directions we can go, whether that be, in the quarterback position. I feel like there's, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 quarterbacks that you could play if you wanted to.
Sure. Yeah. It's definitely going to be a fun ride. And not to mention even that we, finally get a full slate of games. I mean, knock on wood, I guess I'll do that, but no COVID issues. But other than the COVID issues, we don't have teams playing on Tuesday or Wednesday or anything like that. It's one of the first weeks that we can get actually a full slate of games, which I get, I think there's going to be some interesting builds that go along with it too, because that puts in more teams. We got a ton of teams with high implied totals here, over 25. I think I counted like 8 of them. So definitely, like you guys are alluding to, definitely a lot of spots to go. Before we get in to the slate and kind of talk about the quarterback position there, just wanted to shout out all the subscribers that we've had all year. It's just a beautiful thing to see the Fantasy Authority channel just lighten it up, and no surprise that the subscriber numbers have been going up after I know the Fantasy Authority channel tweeted it out. Matty tweeted it out. You can see there if you're watching on YouTube, but if you're listening to this, we need you guys to make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Even if you consume the content on podcast softwares, it's going to be in your best interest to subscribe to this channel before too long, because a subscriber is getting a signed Allen Robinson jersey from the Fantasy Authority here, giveaway on December 27th. So you definitely do not want to miss out on that. That's going to, Allen Robinson's been great this year, and I want to go back to the well with him this week. we kind of teased it last week beforehand, and excited to get back to him this week. So let's kind of get into the slate as you guys are both kind of talking about the quarterback position. Kev, I know you said there are different quarterbacks that are in play. We always think about the quarterback position kind of being the way that we start our builds this week. And so we're looking at the slate. I mean, we got some pretty interesting ways to go. I mean, we have Pat Mahomes once again back on the main slate here again. You know, Pat Mahomes every week, he's going to go out there and do what he does. He's going against a Miami team. And you know, it's interesting because I know Tua's on the injury report this week. So if we get Fitzpatrick somehow in this game to kind of drive the pace, even though it's not really, you know, we don't think of it as a favorable matchup for the pass attack. We think about it, you know, on the ground. We can talk about Myles Gaskin when we get to running backs, but I still think Fitzpatrick would at least help the pace to keep up in this game and to keep Pat Mahomes throwing. So he's always interesting, always in play. You got Russell Wilson at 7,900, Deshaun Watson at 76, Aaron Rodgers 75, Kyler Murray, who seems to be broken right now, at 7,200, and Tom Brady at 6,900. And then you get into, I mean, really some favorable guys. I'm curious to see where your guys' thoughts are. I mean, for me, I see Walid in the chat there talking about Russ. I do feel like this could be, you know, a Russ game. I do like the spot for DK. I like the spot in the slot for Tyler Lockett. And Chris Carson is dealing with an injury. Hyde is dealing with injury. That's something to monitor. But you just got, I mean, you guys both know I love narratives. I love attacking that kind of way. And I'm just looking at this route. They just got embarrassed by the Giants. They're going at home against the Jets. Jets just got rid of the defense coordinator. I don't really care about that. They've been a team to attack all year through the pass, and we know big games can come up anytime Russ is playing. I think he's my favorite pay up option. And then when we get into these mid-tier guys, you know, definitely have interest in Justin Herbert going against the Atlanta defense. The secondary outside of AJ Terrell has not been able to stop anybody. Definitely like what I can come up with stacks for him. Ryan Tannehill at 6,700 on the road against Jacksonville. I mean, Jacksonville's secondary, these guys have been bad outside of like Sidney Jones, but again, they're missing three top guys. If Sidney Jones isn't out there, Clay Brooks isn't out there, Hayden's not out there. They're running out guys like Trey Herndon on most of the snaps, and he's just been, you know, pretty much a turnstile for opposing weapons. So he's interesting there. And even, you know, even a guy like Taysom Hill, who's at 6,600, this might be the last week that we could play him. Michael Thomas has been catching some steam. I've seen on some places and some fantasy outlets, and he's just been so good. Finally throwing for a touchdown last week, and we know what he can offer on the running game. And even for a guy that's cheap, I kind of have some interest in Drew Lock. So I'm curious to see what you guys think about that. He's 5,100, but the guys that you can stack him with when you're looking at Judy, Tim Patrick, Noah Fant at tight end, it makes for an interesting stack. If we can get pieces in that game that are going, we know Christian McCaffrey's probably not going to play, is what they're saying, but Mike Davis still there. You know, maybe we get DJ Moore, Curtis Samuel off the COVID list, and that could help out Robbie Anderson. I kind of like that game kind of going under radar there. So I'm curious to see where you guys' thoughts are. Matty, I see you smiling, but I definitely want to start with Kev this week and kind of see where the Godfather is leaning here as he gets the Santa hat on. Kev, talk to us, man.
I'm laughing at chat. They think you look like Samuel L. Jackson.
Samuel L., I'll take that. Motherfuckers, I'll take that. Let's go. Kev, what are you feeling about this week? How you looking at quarterback?
I love it. One, do not play Deshaun Watson.
God, yeah.
Here we go.
Let's chop it up.
Deshaun Watson's in play. Deshaun Watson's in play. He's not one of my favorite players, but he's definitely in play.
He's not in play. He's not even close to in play.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, even my cat says so.
Okay, so I didn't even want to get into this because he's not even one of my favorite plays. But the fact that he is in play, I mean, listen. So Deshaun Watson, it doesn't really matter. Like with him, I feel like first of all, this isn't a bad matchup for him going on the road against this Bears defense that has actually been obliterated in the passing attack the past 2 weeks. I mean, they really just have been on the snide. haven't been playing up to their potential. It's getting really bad here in Chicago. I mean, Matt Nagy was calling out the defense a couple of weeks ago. Defense has now been bad. Trubisky been back out there, but they just blew that lead against Detroit, and the morale is just down. So there's no reason for me to believe that this team is in a place to kind of get up for a game like this. And you're looking at Deshaun Watson coming in here, and even, just take out the stacking aspect of it from the jump. And I don't really like Brandon Cooks, but I'm looking at guys like Kuti, who's going to be in the slot. I'm looking at guys like Jordan Akins, who tight ends have been obliterating the Bears all season long. I mean, they allowed on average per game second most receptions and the second most touchdowns to tight ends. So Jordan Akins, we know, is in a good spot, and they've given up big plays. Matty, we've talked about this against the Bears all year, giving up the big playability and all of the. It seems like most of the production, if not a lot of big play production for the Texans, comes on these big plays. I think like 18% of their plays have gone for like 20 or more yards. So he's always a threat in these kind of favorable matchups. And you're looking at the rushing upside that he offers. We love that he's rushing, 7-8 on average over the past couple of games. No Will Fuller out there, definitely has put more on him. And I know that Kev wants to talk about the splits without Will Fuller, but again, it's totally different because most of those splits come when DeAndre Hopkins was on the field for them too. And I'm just looking at this situation here. Nothing that the Bears have done over the past 2 weeks has shown me that they can be able to stop a guy of Deshaun Watson's caliber. Just giving up 7 touchdowns in the past 2 weeks. Matt Stafford was lighting them up without Kenny Galladay out there. I just think, and nobody's going to play this guy. And that's why I think he's in play, is because he's buried around guys like Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson and Patrick Mahomes, and people are gonna. And the other thing that's great about Watson, I think, too, is if you don't stack him with Cooks, you're already going to be different from the field in large tournaments. And I definitely like getting some exposure to him. I'm not building around it, but I like getting some exposure to Watson this week.
The chat has
let me have it. I'm ready for it.
Ryan is off today. Locking Watson. My point, he's a lock off and come back on.
At Ryan Alexander _W. Y'all can be on my DMs all week. Let's go.
Yes, I'm building. Let him have it. Let him know why. You can't play Deshaun Watson.
Dude, we go through this every week with the quarterback
against the Bears outside. First of all, okay, here's a couple of things.
Dude, what are you talking about outside? Dude, this dude goes into Jacksonville every year and lights it up outside. What is this outside splits that you want to refer to?
So in his career, when he's been outside, he's averaged like 230 passing yards compared to when he's been inside a dome, which is like 280 yards. It is a thing. Okay. And not to mention the fact, my biggest problem with playing Deshaun Watson,
50 yes,
everything else you just said. My biggest problem with playing Deshaun Watson at 7,600 is I can play Russell Wilson, who's at a 10,000 times better spot. I can play Patrick Mahomes in 8,100, barely more expensive, much better spot. Aaron Rodgers, shits all over him. Like so many guys. Justin Herbert is cheaper than he is. Like Ryan Tannehill. There's so many good quarterbacks on the slate. You don't have to play Deshaun Watson.
And that's what makes him a good tournament play, Kev. Like all of these guys who are in good spots, look at their running backs.
You can't take one game and say, well, this is what he did last week without Will Fuller. The history is not on his side.
I'm not talking about one game, though. I'm just saying
if he didn't do great, if you say, oh, well, and that was with DeAndre Hopkins. If his numbers dropped off without Will Fuller, with DeAndre Hopkins on the field, like, what can you realistically expect? Whatever he's not.
In a Bill O'Brien offense, though, too. Like, let's not think that Romeo Crennel has definitely taken off the training wheels and just said, you know what, fuck what we did for trading for David Johnson. I wasn't a part of that. I don't really like Duke Johnson either. So I'm just gonna let Deshaun go out there and cook. I mean, the attempts have been there. All they do is pass in this offense. And so so 2 things here. One is all the plays that you're alluding to, those running backs are in great spots as well. So like Chris Carson, he could take away from Russell Wilson. Austin Eckler could take away from Justin Herbert. Derrick Henry could take away from Ryan Tannehill. All of the Dalvin Cook, again, from Kirk Cousins. All of these running backs are in good spots as well to go along with these quarterbacks. And I'm looking at Deshaun Watson. I don't have to worry about David Johnson taken away from him. I don't have to worry about Duke Johnson taken away from him. It's going to be Deshaun Watson just going out there and doing his thing. And it's not even about the Will Fuller thing, Kev. I was more so alluding to what the Bears defense has been allowing to players over the past 2 weeks. And a guy like Matthew Stafford, who he hasn't really been that good without Kenny Golladay. But because of the way this defense is playing, he was able to go out there with guys like Marvin Jones and Danny Amendola and TJ Hawkinson and light them up for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns. And Deshaun Watson is fully capable of that. And his ownership is not going to reflect the type of player that he is. And again, it's large field tournament play. I think that you can get leverage on the field. He's going to be going under the radar. I mean, guys like Baker Mayfield were winning people money. Mike Glennon were winning people money. And the price tag doesn't really matter to me for Deshaun Watson because this dude has 30-point upside with the rushing ability that he's able to see. And so to just say that it's a bad play, again, I just don't agree with that. He's not one of my favorites, but I feel like I have to stand on this hill for him just because of the player that he is and what he means to the offense and what he's going to be doing from a DFS standpoint. And people don't want to play him. And that's what makes me kind of excited about having teams, because on the other side too, Montgomery in a great spot, Allen Robinson in a great spot. So if Mitchell Trubisky can go out there and David Montgomery can go out there and kind of keep this game, keep pressure on Watson to throw even more, then I mean, he's going to reach that 30 plateau. I feel like 30-point plateau. That's how I feel. Love that game stack.
My take is he better get you 30 points because there's going to be probably 3 or 4 guys that get close to or reach the 30-point threshold. So I think your quarterback that you play this week, no matter what his price tag is, he's going to have to be a top 3, top 4 quarterback overall in scoring, no matter what his price is, even if he's 5,100. Like, just the layout of the slate, there's so many games that have the potential to just go nuclear. And so there's going to be, 1 or 2 stacks where you're like, man, you have to have them to even have a shot to win a tournament. So
for sure. And I think
all I'm saying is, if that's your thinking with Deshaun, you think he can, he's got a good shot to be a top scoring quarterback on the slate overall. And it's not price adjusted, and he is priced at the top, so he kind of has to get you there regardless. But I mean, if you think he gets you 30 to 35, play him.
And I think that you can get there without doing a lot for your salary and sacrificing. I mean, I love Russell Wilson this week, but I'm looking at builds and I'm like, well, how many times have both Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf popped off in the same game? So can I get one of these guys to just go for their 35 or 40-point game and fit them in on the Deshaun Watson team that carries just QT and Atkins, who don't carry, heavy price tags, and still get exposure to the Tennessee offense, still get exposure to the Seattle offense, still get exposure to running backs in good spots? I mean, the stack allows for you to still, come up with a scenario where that game can hit, and you could still have exposure to this other team without going heavy on the full game there, so to speak. If we were talking about Deshaun Watson and Will Fuller and Brandon Cooks being these guys, and it was 7.6 for the quarterback, 7K something for the wide receiver, 6 mid-tier for the other wide receiver, then yeah, I mean the builds would allow you to not be able to take some of these other players in good spots. But because of the way the pricing goes on the options that come along with Watson, that's what kind of makes me feel that he's in play, because I do think that high 20s is definitely in his range of outcomes. And, when you get into 30s, you're just talking about multiple scoring, multiple touchdowns for him with the running that he's seeing, which I think he's still in a position to do that the way the Bears attack with their front seven.
Yeah, I probably won't get there myself. But, I mean, again, if you think he's got a shot to be the overall QB1 on the slate, by all means, fire him up.
Kev, where you at with quarterback? Who are your guys?
Not Deshaun Watson.
So who are you playing?
So, all right. So, like I said, for me, Justin Herbert is 100% one of my favorite plays. He's coming off, not probably, his worst game of his entire career, short career. Last week, I still don't have any idea how they just got boat raced 45-0 against the Patriots last week, and that terrible ass offense. But I really want to start with Ryan Tannehill, and I honestly don't think he's going to be all that chalky considering how many good quarterbacks are on the slate, because I think some people are going to tell themselves whenever they look at Ryan Tannehill and this Jacksonville offense is that they're going to all looking at it like, okay, Derrick Henry's going to come out and absolutely smash, and so don't play Ryan Tannehill in this game. But I think that's a big mistake because, one, the Jaguars have done a really good job this year. Like they've kept every game, just about every game they've played close. Like they have not been getting blown out. If you go and look at the Jags, and the 3 of the last 4 games, including games against the Packers, Vikings, Browns, and Texans, they've lost by a touchdown or less. So like this isn't a team that's out here just getting blown out. And if that's the case, then I think that puts Ryan Tannehill right square, in play. And if you look at him, he's 9th in air yards, 9th in air yards per attempt, and 3rd in fantasy points per game, and he's 5th in passing touchdowns. And Jacksonville obviously is terrible against the pass. They're 31st in pass DVOA, 23rd in rush DVOA, and they also allow the 4th most DK points to the position. And so I think Ryan Tannehill is 100% still in play this week. And I know some people will probably want to go in a different direction because of, like I said, Derrick Henry. And I really don't know if I can still play $8,700 Derrick Henry. Like I get the matchup, but I know in his previous 2 games against the Jaguars, he's crushed them. And I know it's December now, so it's the winter is coming Derrick Henry narrative that's so fucking stupid. But at $8,700, I just don't know if I can mess with that, right? So I like Ryan Tannehill at 6,700. I just think that is pretty cheap for him. I think Kirk Cousins is a great play as well at 6,200 against the Bucks.
Boy.
This Bucks defense has been really exposed, especially on the ground, or especially lately. We've seen quarterbacks come in there and light them up. And I think, when you look at they're still not going to have Alexander Madison, and Dalvin Cook is banged up, and they have been elite against the run. They're going to be forced to throw. And if you look at Kirk Cousins, Kirk Cousins is on a fucking heater right now. He scored, I think, at least 17 DK points in each of his last 5 games. 25 or 26, 30, 26, and 18. And he's pretty cheap at 6,200. They still haven't really priced him up. I think you can fit in and we're also looking at the possibility of not having Kyle Rudolph this week, which I think Irv Smith returned to practice, which I think that would be a good play if you want to go there with either Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen. You can play any of these guys because the Jacksonville secondary is absolutely atrocious. Or Jacksonville, the Bucks secondary is not anything you should be worried about. I got sidetracked with talking about the Jags, but
Tampa Bay's bad too.
Yeah, but I like Kirk Cousins at 6,200. And if you want to get weird, I still think you can go right back to the Mitch Trubisky at 5,600 going against Houston. That defense is terrible. If you want to stack him with Allen Robinson, maybe Cole Kmet. I think Cole Kmet is 100% in play as well. He is somebody that has, especially the last 2 or 3 weeks, has really become more and more involved in that passing offense. And he's actually been running more routes and seeing more targets than Jimmy Graham in that offense. So I do like him as well. And I think Andy Dalton is in play against Cincinnati at 5,500. So I think there's just a lot of good plays. Obviously, the elite plays up top. I don't really need to get into, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Pat Mahomes. All of those guys are 100% options this week, and we'll have a lot of them. The only other guy that I would talk about too, I guess, is Matt Stafford going against Green Bay. So it's only 1 week of sample size, but Darren Bevel has really just taken the reins off of Matt Stafford again, now with Matt Patricia gone. So last week he threw for 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, but things that really stood out to me is they were so aggressive last week. And he averaged 13.1 air yards per attempt, which is the second highest total of his career. And he completed 16 passes of 10 plus yards last week against the Bears. So they are out here looking to chuck it, and Green Bay could certainly be had through the air. And so I think this is a game that has shootout potential written all over it because Detroit defense is absolutely horrific. And this is a game they're going to have to play catch up. And at 5,700, I think this is another really good spot to get to at 5,700 if you want to pay down.
Matty, how you feeling about quarterback this week?
So just to piggyback off of what I was saying about Deshaun, I think you've got to look at each quarterback that you're going to, plug into your roster and say, can this guy get me top 3 fantasy points at the position this week? Just because of the nature of the landscape of how many fantasy points I think we're going to see this week, especially from air attacks. I think you've got to nail the raw overall points as much as we want to save salary. And we'll talk about it at the running back position, but there's a lot of cheap running backs to where salary is almost not an issue for your stacks. There's there's a handful of 5K guys at the running back position that have a monster ceiling based on matchup and workload. So, for me, it's, I'm going to do everything I can to fit in these stud quarterbacks, not necessarily just the guys just at the top of the pricing range. But, Kev, you touched on Cousins, and I think that, last week I was all over Cleveland and Tennessee, and I think Minnesota and Tampa Bay is that game for me this week. You've got Tampa Bay, who's a pass funnel defense. We know that, Minnesota will try to run the ball with Dalvin Cook as much as they can, but at some point they have to rely on throwing the ball. And I say the Patriots because Tom Brady, but the Bucks, they rank 5th over the last 4 weeks in pass rates when in one-score games, throwing the ball 67% of the time. So we know on the Bucks side they're going to want to throw the ball. And Tom Brady's easy to stack with, especially if Mike Evans is out. You've got Antonio Brown and Chris Godwin and Gronk. So there's really only 3 pass catchers there you got to worry about if Evans is out. So I really like that game. I think that, Minnesota, when they have had to push it through the air, they've been able to do that. You look at the Dallas game, not a good defense. They were able to put up points. The Seattle game, not a good defense. They were able to put up a ton of points. And they've really put up points all year. So Minnesota's played and quietly been in a lot of shootouts this year, whether it's been on the ground or through the air. Like when Justin Jefferson, when they have to pass, they get Justin Jefferson going deep down the field, and he burns everybody. And, Adam Thielen is probably going to go overlooked because of how good Jefferson has been, and he's the sexier name right now. But I think Thielen's even cheaper than Jefferson. So I really like that game. I think it turns into a pass fest back and forth. The other game that I really want to stack a bunch of is the Chargers in Atlanta. I think Herbert, this is a mega bounce back spot for him. Atlanta. So while we have been saying, they've kind of been better since the coaching change, but you look at kind of the teams they've faced since week 5. So you've got Minnesota, 363 passing yards. Detroit, 322 passing yards. Carolina, 270 passing yards. Denver, 271 passing yards. Then you got the last 3 games are 2 Taysom Hill games, who he's not going to throw a bunch. And then Derek Carr had a down game for 179. So this Atlanta team, who we were picking on every single week to start the year, they still have been giving up production through the air. And I think their games have kind of gone lower in terms of total score because Atlanta themselves have tried to run the ball more, but they have actually trended back, skewed more towards passing the ball recently. Over the last 4 weeks in one-score games, they're up to 68% passing, which is second in the league. And guess who's in third? The Chargers, 68%, right there with them. So I think there's going to be a ton of passing in that game. And just like the other game, Minnesota-Tampa Bay, we know the key culprits if that game goes off. You got Keenan Allen, Austin Eckler on one side, even Hunter Henry's an option. And then on the other side, running it back, obviously Julio and Ridley. And it's such an easy game to stack. And with all the value running backs, I think that it's very easy to do this week. So those are really the 2 games that I'm going to focus on a lot in terms of, the air attacks that I'm going for. And then I do want to say, I think you're going to hear some talk this week about the matchup that Patrick Mahomes has and how the Dolphins defense has been very good this year. And while that is the case, again, a big part of my process is to look at the teams that they've played and, how good have the team's been in both the passing attacks and the rushing attacks as a whole in the season and say, okay, if this team is good passing the ball and they did well against the Dolphins, maybe the Dolphins aren't that great of a pass defense and they've just been kind of hidden by a weaker schedule. So when you slice it down to that level, Josh Allen threw for, let's see, I'm up on where are we at? Dolphins. Here we go. So on defense, Josh Allen threw for 411 yards. Russell Wilson, 343 yards. Jared Goff, who's not as good as those guys, 340 yards. Kyler Murray even threw for 264. Then you get to the Denver Broncos, hung 270 on them. Like, and then it's a bunch of Jets and Patriots and Jaguars. And so I think that, they've given up a ton of yardage production to elite quarterbacks and passing attacks that are competent. And so if Mahomes is going to go overlooked this week, I think that's a mistake. He's in play every week. He's matchup proof. And especially here, I just think the matchup is not as tough as people are going to make it out to be. So I just wanted to point that out, that quick nugget on him. There's no really need to dive much further into Mahomes, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like every time he's on the main slate, Matty, he does go kind of overlooked. It's just like people are looking at him. They're looking at Hill. They're looking at Kelsey. I mean, that's the thing, right? When people get into stacks, I feel like the mentality is, okay, what stacks can I do that are affordable? Because people want to play the entire slate as a whole instead of taking in game environments like you talk about, Matty, where you're stacking up that game environment like the Minnesota or Tampa Bay game. Like, people have a hard time on a big game, on a main slate like this, to say, okay, give me 5 or 6 players from one game, even though we see that all the time pay out dividends. When you look at the Millie team and you're like, okay, how many guys did this person have from one game? 4 guys, 5 guys, 6 guys sometimes, if the game goes ballistic, instead of trying to get one-offs in all these different spots. So, yeah, I mean, like, it's always, if you're multi-entering, you always got to have Mahomes in your player pool because of the upside that this guy brings. And I actually do like paying up for Kelsey this week too, with Hill having missed practice and everything. We can talk about that at the tight end and wide receiver position respectively. Let's see. Are there any other things to talk about here? I know I saw in the chat that there was some discussion about Jalen Hurts this week at 5,100. He's replacing Carson Wentz at home, but going against the New Orleans Saints, it just really doesn't do much for me. I just don't know. He's not dynamic enough, or that we know of yet. I mean, maybe he is, but I just don't see the dynamic ability like a Taysom Hill, where you're saying, okay, if he doesn't throw for passing, is he going to get me, 70, 80 yards on the ground and like be the red zone guy to run it in. And then with the wide receivers, I mean, I saw Greg Ward kind of seeing some upticks once he came into the game and got named a starter. And these guys just aren't sexy enough for me to play with. Alshon Jeffrey still going to run out there. Hard to trust Rager. Zach Ertz is back. Maybe you could trust Goddard, but I just don't know what the build is that gets you there to playing Hurts on the team. Do you guys have any interest in playing Hurts this week?
I mean, in terms of being dynamic at the position, I mean, he certainly is that. I mean, his senior year in college, he threw for almost 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, but he also ran for 1,300 yards.
Oh, sure,
rushing.
Yeah.
Like, the dude is certainly dynamic enough to pick up yardage on the ground. And the question is, though, for him, but at 5,100, like, what exactly are you expecting him to do? And, if he can pick up a lot of yards on the ground, and as I talked about, you look at Taysom Hill when he was 4,800, he won somebody the Millie Maker. And while that's true, I don't think they have the same type of weapons necessarily, though, that the Saints have. And that was also against the Falcons, where this is a completely different matchup. But like, I don't hate Jalen Hurts. Like, Jalen Hurts, like, there's a lot of people that think Jalen Hurts can end up being like an elite level quarterback. Like, a lot of his traits and everything transition to that. But in his first real start, we saw the spark, but that happens quite a bit. Whenever you see kind of a backup come in and all of a sudden you get a spark off the bench because it's kind of a change in scenery. But I don't know if this is the spot that I would want to do it, because the Saints defense has just been so damn good. I
don't think it's a slate for it either.
Right. Like, there's just so many other options.
Yeah.
Right. But would it surprise me if Jalen Hurts comes out and throws for 260 and rushes for, I don't know, 50, 60 yards? No. Maybe this offense can finally get going, but I don't trust it because Doug Peterson's a fucking idiot and just a terrible head coach. The shit he comes out and says, like, this week, like, we got to try to get Miles Sanders going. You think, you fucking idiot? Like, the last couple of weeks when you had great matchups, against, bad run defenses, and you decided not to utilize them at all. And then, I don't know, let's put in Jordan fucking Howard.
I was going to say, let's get Jordan Howard snaps.
Yeah, and running routes and everything else. Like he's a fucking idiot. Like him and Matt Nagy are both products of Andy Reid, and only reason they're in they're even head coaches is because of Andy Reid, and they're both been exposed to be terrible fucking head coaches.
Yeah, not great, not great. I guess if you're looking at it,
can he be better playing cash at his price?
Honestly, no, because like he could go out there and get 15, 18 points, and that just might not be enough. If the guys that we're talking about, like Tannehill, Herbert, Mahomes, Russell, if they put up 30 or more than, if all these guys are smashing, it won't be enough for you to kind of get there. I guess he allows you to get higher at some of the other positions.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you played like him, and then you played Derrick Henry and Aaron Jones, for example, I'm just thinking off the top of my head, you could stack them probably with Rager or Goddard or something like that. Whatever you want to do. I don't know. I'm just trying to think about. I don't play cash at all, so of course, like I'm just trying to think of ways like. Would it surprise me if Jalen Hurts won somebody a million maker? No, because there's all kinds of quarterbacks that are bad that have won people $1 million. But I think you're right. Like I think it's not overall. I just don't think he.
Yeah, I think he's a better tournament player where you could say, you take him at 5,100, you take a guy like Greg Ward who's 3,100 this week, and then run it back with Michael Thomas. I mean, if you're building Hurts teams, you have to have Michael Thomas on the run back. Like it's just. That's the way that he puts up points, is that somebody else is smashing on the other side. And with Taysom, we know that that's most likely to be Michael Thomas. But I would mostly run that line in tournaments, because that's just going to carry no weight to it at all as far as ownership goes. And you would, build up those teams. Whereas in cash, I really just try and lock in those surefire production points of, how many guys can get me 25 and plug them in. Because you're able, we'll talk about it with the running back and wide receiver position. Like there's so many places where guys are mispriced that you won't have to put in a $5,100 quarterback to feel good about your team. And we can go over to running back right now and kind of talk about it. Kev, I know you kind of alluded to not wanting to play an 87 Derrick Henry. 8,700 Derrick Henry here going against Jacksonville. I think I'm not really sure. I haven't looked at ownership at all, but I think that it's, he'll definitely find himself in a favorable spot. You got Dalvin Cook on the road at 9,400 going against Tampa Bay. It seemed that you can't really target running backs against, but Dalvin Cook seeing 38 touches last week after Zimmer coming out and saying we need to monitor his workload is just hilariously laughable. So he's going to get touches. It's just hard to kind of pay for a price tag against what this defense has been, I guess, not offering to the position. He really has to, get those touchdowns there for you to feel comfortable about paying that price tag. And then, I think for me this week, it really comes down to, as I was looking into this, I really look at those home favorite running backs to try and see where my builds are starting and just see where the slate's kind of taking me. And all of these good running backs outside of Austin Eckler are, on the road. You got Dalvin Cook, but in a tough matchup on the road. Derrick Henry in a pretty decent matchup on the road. Aaron Jones on the road. James Robinson, who's questionable, you got him at home against Tennessee, so maybe you could trust him. But and Eckler at home too. But some of these, like I was looking at Elliott before he popped up with this calf injury from the Tuesday game, and he's 6,600 going against Cincinnati on the road. And then you get down to, David Montgomery. I think he'll be popular again, 6,500 going against Houston. Ronald Jones, maybe people can talk themselves into him at 6,100 in that same game. If you like that game to kind of put up numbers there, you got Jonathan Taylor going against the Raiders, and he's on the road at 5,800. So that's really interesting that we see a lot of these, running backs that I would usually target on the road in favorable matchups. I guess if we're talking about at the top, I do like Aaron Jones going against Detroit at 7,600. This Green Bay offense is just putting up points at will. And I know that, people really think about okay, so Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, especially against this Detroit secondary, and I don't doubt that Adams will definitely get his. But when we're talking about red zone role and kind of upside that Jones can offer you at 7,600, I kind of like him for tournaments there. You're hoping that the target share can kind of creep up there. He's always around somewhere between 15 and 18 carries on the ground, but he just gets utilized in the red zone. He gets high volume touches. I always like trying to get exposure to him when I can't pay up the $9,000 price tag for Devontae Adams. And Austin Eckler, I think just because of his target share has been great. I mean, Atlanta against pass catching backs, that was a thing last year. It's kind of slowly becoming a thing this year too, because they have been good against the ground, so to speak. And they're really, like Matty, you alluded to, giving up points against the pass. And I'm just looking at 25 targets from Austin Eckler the past 2 weeks is absolutely ridiculous workload share. He's on the field regardless if they're getting blown out by 45 against the Patriots or if they're in close games. So definitely like him in that Atlanta game as a one-off. I think Montgomery is definitely okay to go back to just because of the matchup there against Houston. Everybody's 8. And then, yeah, Matty, I'll start with you as you talked about this 5K range and the tier that this kind of jumps off at the page. And I think a lot of people will look at this and at least try and get one of these guys, if not build teams that have 2 of them, where we're talking about Myles Gaskin, Jonathan Taylor, Wayne Gallman. I think people will talk themselves into if Zeke misses, Tony Pollard at 5,300 becomes in play. Melvin Gordon is at 5,200 here. Kev, I know you talked about him in our chat and like him a lot. So Matty, talk to me about what your process is kind of saying to you as you get into builds this week here.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail right on the head. With most of it, I don't know that I'm going to end up paying up above Aaron Jones at his $7,600 price tag. It's going to be really tough for me to get to Derrick Henry, considering he doesn't catch passes. And the thing I think it was Kev mentioned playing Tannehill. The thing with Tennessee is they are really just touchdown roulette. Is basically how you get the ceiling, right? So you look at Tannehill last year, he was putting up 30-point games, Draftkings points games on very limited volume. Like he was throwing 30 times a game and was putting up, 260 passing yards, but he was throwing in those games, he would throw 4 touchdowns. And then the big Derrick Henry games, like, yeah, he can run for $160, but he's really got to score the 3 touchdowns to really burn me for, an $8,700 price tag. So just kind of touchdown variance, touchdown roulette there. And I think, you can take a chance on fading Henry with that. Obviously it can always burn you, but Aaron Jones, he's going to be very popular, 7,600 against Detroit. And I will say not this week, but whenever we get green or purple grapes, definitely green. Anything green. Give me the sour. Give me the sour taste.
Oh my God. Love it.
I will say Kamara, he's not in play this week with Taysom at quarterback, but once we get Drew Brees back, if he's still underpriced, just make sure you play him when Drew Brees comes back. That's just what I wanted to touch on him there. Eckler, I already mentioned him in a game stack, but you can definitely play him against Atlanta. They give up a ton of points to pass catching running backs. And then I like Swift. I'm sure Kev will talk about him coming back off injury. And then, the 5K tier. So there's like 4 or 5 guys right in a row. So Jonathan Taylor, 5,800 against the Raiders, who just gave up over 100 yards to Ty Johnson and the Jets. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no excuse that Indy can't just run all over this Raiders team. The issue with Indy is, how much Wilkins gets involved, how much Nyheim Hines gets involved. So he's definitely more of a tournament play. There is risk there, but Taylor's upside is massive in this matchup. Gaskin, 5,600 against Kansas City. We know he's got one of the safer workloads on the slate, and he's priced way down low. And if he had scored any of the rushes, last week where he got to the 1-yard line, like it was at least 5 times. We'd be looking at over a 20-point DK game. And he's put up 14 to 20 points almost every game this year. It's like 5,600 is too cheap for him, and I don't even think we've seen his ceiling yet. This is a game that they should be trailing Kansas City for most of it, and Gaskin has shown a very high upside in the pass games role. So I really like him. And then Kenyon Drake, man, ever since Kyler Murray has come up with that shoulder injury, they're not running Kyler at the goal line. And Kenyon Drake over the last 3 or 4 weeks, he's got 21 red zone carries compared to Kyler Murray's 2. And that, if that doesn't tell you Kyler's hurt, I don't know what other red flags you need to see. But not only that, but I mean, I can't remember who tweeted it out this week, but somebody tweeted DeAndre Hopkins' route tree, and he's running 5 to 10 yard routes and not running anything deep. And so that's another sign that tells me, Murray is not trying to work the ball downfield. He's trying to avoid getting hit. And that's another reason you've seen Kenyon Drake's target share increase over the last couple games. So the Giants, they are not a defense that, they have been a good defense, but they're not a defense that's really been able to stop the run. Over the last month, they ranked dead last in explosive run rate allowed. Kenyon Drake is finally looking healthy. We talked about him all year, the first few weeks of the year, how bad he looked with that coming off that foot injury out of camp. And I think he's finally starting to shake that injury. And he's starting to look like a first or second round fantasy football running back that we drafted him for. So I really like him at 5,500. Tony Pollard, if we get him, if Zeke misses, he's definitely in play. It sounds like Jacobs could miss again this week. So if he's out, we go back to the Booker well against Indy. I mean, it's not really a great matchup, but the workload is going to be there. And, if he falls into a couple touchdowns, great. Melvin Gordon, I know Kev's going to talk about him. The matchup doesn't get any better against Carolina. So, yeah. And then you round out that tier with Gio Bernard at home against Dallas. If you just scroll through Dallas's game logs, I won't read them all to you. But the Dallas rush defense has been the worst in the NFL this year. They give up over 100 yards rushing every single game, and Gio has no competition for touches there, really. So, $5K, sign me up.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been tough because the attempts haven't been there. You would like to see a larger workload there for them, but if we get bad Andy, I guess so to speak, and this game could be a little bit slower pace. Maybe Bernard gets worked in a little bit more. Kev, let's go to you, and maybe you could start at the bottom as we're getting some Melvin Gordon questions in here. I know that's kind of one of the guys that you wanted to talk about this week, and then kind of tell us and the people kind of where your builds are taking you from the beginning. And shout out to Walito in the chat. I just, as I was riffing and Matty's been riffing over all these plays. I mean, we both touched on Austin Eckler here, Walito. So yeah, there's definitely love there, and you could get the trifecta if Kev's on that same build too. So Kev, take it away, man. How you feeling this week?
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like with Melvin Gordon this week. I think that you look at him last week again against Kansas City, where he had 15 for 131. Did not find the end zone, but I don't know why they've kind of not utilized him as much as a pass catcher. He is a very capable pass catcher, but Melvin Gordon at 5,200 is certainly a place you can go, especially against Carolina, a defense that can be had on the ground, especially recently. But I think this is a team that's a play that you could go to, because I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to come in and want to play Jonathan Taylor, and then are going to want to play some of these other guys, like Wayne Gallman at 5,700, or Myles Gaskin, which I think Myles Gaskin could end up being a trap. Like I get it that the Chiefs defense, or the Chiefs have been bad against the run, and that is certainly a thing. But the question for me is, if the Chiefs punch him in the mouth and they get up 21-0, like, are they going to continue to utilize him? And I don't know if that's really the case. And I think that he's kind of a trap, in my opinion, because this feels like a game that the Chiefs could blow the doors off the Dolphins. And if that happens,
he's going to get a ton of targets then, though. I mean, you look at his target log: 6, 4, 5, 4, 5, 7, 4.
So, but if let's say he does. Let's say he gets 8 targets, and let's say he goes 5 for 40, right? Not bad. I guess at his price, but if he doesn't find the end zone, like, I'm just saying, like, depending on where he comes in terms of ownership, because I've seen a lot of people in love with Myles Gaskin this week, especially because of what they've been doing. I just think if he's going to be highly owned, then I probably would back up that I wouldn't want any part of him, because there is multiple running backs in this range that I think that you could play that
for sure
that are just maybe a little bit better options. That's all I'm saying. Like I get it, I get the play, but will I have any Myles Gaskin? Probably not. Just because I just think there are just better options here. Like I said, Jonathan Taylor, you guys already touched on it. It's the best, one of the best spots of any running back this weekend against the Raiders. The Raiders are fucking horrific against the run. They just let Ty Johnson run for 100 yards against them. Like this run defense is truly terrible. For the and not to mention the fact that Phillip Rivers is also dealing with what I believe is a pretty severe case of turf toe. So trying to limit him a little bit and utilizing him and just turning around and handing the ball off to Jonathan Taylor. The only thing that scares me with him is just fucking Frank Reich. Like, is Frank Reich going to do something stupid
right.
and let Jordan Wilkins get some extra run or something like that? But other than that, I think that Jonathan Taylor is an elite play. Now, again, I think he's probably going to be really, really highly owned, and trying to figure out a way to get it a little bit different, I think, is another way you could go. Now, past that, I think Ezekiel Elliott. I haven't heard it really. I don't know if either of you two touched a whole lot on Ezekiel Elliott, but 6,600 as Ezekiel Elliott against Cincinnati. I'm here for it.
If he plays,
I think he plays.
Yeah, I saw that they were one of the beats was reporting that he talked to them and just said that it would slow him down, but he fully expects to be out there and be fine. So, but something to monitor definitely, as he's been limited this week.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's more his price. Like at 6,600, I mean, he's normally an 8K running back, right? And I get it. Mm-hmm. He hasn't been nearly as good this year. He didn't look bad against Baltimore this past week. He didn't find the end zone, but 18 for 77. He did was targeted 6 times, which was encouraging as well, because his targets had kind of dwindled down a little bit. But that was also because they were trailing. But this is just a great matchup against Cincinnati. And 6,600, I feel like that, again, nobody's going to want to play him because he's been awful. He hasn't really shown much of a ceiling in quite some time. He had 22.4 against Minnesota, but past that, you have to go way back to like week 4, week 5, back when Dak was there, whenever they actually were able to want to utilize them. So I will have some interest, and I will play some Derrick Henry, some Ezekiel Elliott at his price tag, just because I just think, again, Cincinnati, it's just a smash spot for him. And so I'm going to go there. Aaron motherfucking Jones, 7,600. If I'm paying up at running back, that's where it starts. It's like I can't play Derrick Henry at 8,700. I'm not playing Dalvin Cook at 9,400. No fucking way. It has to be an elite fucking spot to play Dalvin Cook at when he is $9,600. Dalvin Cook in his career only has 3 games over 30 fantasy points. 3.
Right.
So it is such a rare occurrence for him to like. He is so for me.
And 2 of them have been this year, right?
Yeah, 2 of them were this year. One was the 45-point game, and then I think he had like a 30-point game. But
all of them were all three were.
Well, I guess Draftkings as well. Yeah. With 3-point. Yeah, but he's just somebody that especially in this matchup, he's banged up. Like, there's just so many red flags here. I'll have 0. And if Derrick Henry burns me for 4 touchdowns, then I'll go down with it. But it's $8,700 is just too expensive, especially for the plays that I'd rather get to. And then James Robinson, 7,500. Tennessee, terrible run defense. You can lock him in for 20 touches. Absolutely lock him in. Like, it's crazy that like it was either last week or the week before was the first time another running back touched the ball since week 8. That is like, you cannot get that from any other running back. There is no concern about a running back taking his touches, taking his goal line carries, taking his targets, nothing. Like, he is the man in this backfield. And even at 7,500 against Tennessee, who is an absolutely terrible defense, is just insane, right? And so at 7,500, and nobody's going to play him because nobody wants to play James Robinson. It's just yeah, it's just nuts.
Right. No, he's the cash running back, right? Like if you're building cash teams, you start with James Robinson just because of the production and what he offers with you and not, just game script, right? Like this dude will be out there in blowouts, he'll be out there in neutral scripts, he'll be out there when they're winning. So yeah, James Robinson is always in play, and even this week, as we get some of these guys that are around him, he could go under the radar, especially dealing with this questionable tag. But it sounds like he should be fine and was going to play. So yeah, he's definitely always in play. I agree. Well, he does kind of blah when it comes to tournaments because he kind of sits around the just getting over double-digit points. But you're looking at solid matchups, and if Tennessee's able to keep this game pace up, I guess not Tennessee, but Glennon, if we can get Glennon to kind of get the ball moving here and to keep pace on the other side with Tennessee, then he'll definitely be able to get his James Robinson, that is. I wanted to touch on before we move on to wide receiver that what are we doing with Mike Davis here? He's priced up at 6,200, and this has been DraftKings MO all year, is pricing up the backup running back because of all the situations that are happening with COVID and things of that nature. So we're not getting the misprice of Mike Davis again, as we did when he was against Tampa Bay at 4K, but 6,200 here, or 6,400, excuse me, on DraftKings without Christian McCaffrey. They could be without DJ Moore, could be without Curtis Samuel in this matchup if they don't get activated off the COVID list. How do we feel about that?
I'm not playing Mike Davis this week. I think so. We kind of talked about this earlier today. I think what my assessment of the Carolina situation will be if Samuel and DJ Moore are out, is you're going to get a half-powered Carolina offense, that hasn't really been great anyways. I mean, they've been good through Robbie Anderson, and DJ Moore has shown some upside here and there. And obviously CMC has been great when he's played. But I mean, outside of those guys really having good one-off games, like that offense as a whole has not been, that great this year anyways. And so if they're going to miss two of their best weapons, I think that offense just becomes a full fade for me. And I think you see a lot of Carolina punts, even though Denver is missing a ton of starters on defense. Denver's kind of played pretty solid, regardless of how their defensive personnel has been. So that game's just kind of gross for me. I think I'd rather go, to like a DeAndre Swift at the same price, assuming he's in. Find the 600 more for Eckler. I'm going to make a really hard effort to get to Eckler. I mean, what do you have? 16 targets 2 weeks ago and 9 targets last week. And the 9 targets last week, he was still playing when they were down by 45. So it's like they're gonna run this dude. Like he's basically told them, I want to be out there for my fantasy football teams. So like Eckler's a baller, man. So I really like him this week. And it's gonna be hard to justify paying 6,400 for Davis when I can just pay 600 more for Eckler. But to kind of go off what do you think about this guy? What are you guys doing with J.D. McKissic, assuming Gibson is out, considering he's doubtful now? He's 4,900. Gibson had taken over that lead dog role for a couple weeks when Washington had played in front during those games. And then last week, Gibson goes down. McKissic starts to get some run, and he saw 10 targets. And he was also getting some rush attempts too. So I think he's really interesting, and I think people are going to completely overlook him because they see the matchup with San Fran. But I mean, 5 rushes and 10 targets last week against Pittsburgh. I mean, that's a tougher matchup, right? And he scored 18 DraftKings points. So I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on what you're going to do there, because I would assume, they're not just going to run Peyton Barber 25 times, right?
No, I mean, at least we don't think so. I mean, even when Gibson was out there getting run, I mean, McKissic still had a role. I mean, not only the 10 targets, Matty, but 10 catches as well last week. So, I mean, the DraftKings floor for this guy is always pretty stellar and in play. I think I'll just let my builds kind of talk to me with it. I definitely would either want to have a really big shootout that I feel good about, like the Tampa Bay Minnesota game, if I'm like you talked about building around that. So I think getting a guy like McKissick in there to kind of go along with that stack, or just have, these guys that are really high priced in spots that I feel like if I'm looking for that last spot there to kind of plug in, I'm looking at 4,900 McKissick. I can kind of feel good about that. But
McKissick
for
or
me,
Gio?
It would probably be McKissick. Just because of the offense. I mean, Alex Smith is at least keeping them respectable right now. And is Brandon Allen, I thought he was on the injury report too. I saw, and maybe he's off of it now.
I don't know.
But I know that's the thing. They don't have him listed here. It was chest, but he practiced full on Wednesday. So he's good. But it's just like, that offense is, and that game is just like, just not sexy enough for me to try and think about pieces for that game. We could talk about, I guess, Michael Gallup at wide receiver at his cheap price tag, but it just depends on my builds, I guess, for me, for McKissick to get there, because I think for me, what I really want to try and do is to get in the mid range of running backs where I'm paying, for 2 7K guys or a 7K guy and a 6K guy, because I think people will try and get that 5K range and jam that in. And so I'm looking for ways to just lock in my production with these 7K guys that I know that I can trust to get in the 20-point range, or, feel really confident in betting on the probability of them hitting in the 20-point range and getting them at lower ownership than what people will do at the 5K range. And even cheap in the 6K range too, and paying up for the Henrys and the Cooks and things of that nature. Kev, you got anything else at running back before we move on?
No, I'm just telling this guy in the chat why he's a fucking idiot.
Oh God, chat is lit. Chat is lit
Tonight. Chat's on one.
Rocking with us. Week 14 main slate breakdown as we get into it, hitting that hour mark there. If you guys are listening to us, or if you skipped ahead and you just wanted to kind of get into the positional breakdowns, subscribe to the channel, YouTube channel here, the Fantasy Authority, for that Allen Robinson signed jersey that we're going to be giving away on December 27th. You definitely want in on that. So we appreciate everybody who's subscribing and rocking with us. Let's move on to wide receiver, boys. We've got wide receiver, tight end, and defense to break down here. And so, as we alluded to, wide receiver at the top, you got the usual suspects, right? Devontae Adams, he's just absolutely it's crazy what this dude is doing. Like, pretty much going to break all the Packers receiving records for this season in only 14 games. And so if he had played 16 games, there's only, no telling what he was going to do with that. As over the 1,000-yard plateau already, 13 receiving touchdowns, just been absolutely incredible. And another guy that's been incredible is Tyreek Hill. Again, over the 1,000-yard mark, 74 catches on the year, 13 touchdowns, matching Devontae Adams there. And he's at least according to DraftKings, because probably he was at practice, and they said that he practiced in full today. With the picture that was going around of him showing up there, but he's 8,500. So these guys are, always hard to pass up on, but high price. Tyreek Hill going against Miami, Devontae Adams going against Detroit. That's great. And then we got DK Metcalf at 8,400 going against the Jets. I mean, it's going to be tough to kind of see how builds get done, because I think those guys will definitely carry some popularity. Guy that's going to go under the radar, I feel like, is Keenan Allen. This team just got blown out by 45 against the Patriots, who just got steamrolled by the Rams. He's 7,700 and really hasn't, been able to do much. But this secondary, again, for Atlanta is just not good outside of this rookie, AJ Terrell. And even then, he's been got. But guys like Denard and Isaiah Oliver and whoever else they're running out there, it's just not been good for them. And Keenan Allen always in play with Justin Herbert there. Still, seeing the target share, just hasn't been able to kind of put it all together at those 8K price tags. So getting a little discount on him at 7,700, like him. DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Tyler Lockett, Michael Thomas, and Adam Thielen kind of round out your wide receivers that are 7K and above. We'll definitely like to get some exposure to Tyler Lockett. Definitely want to get some exposure to AJ Brown going against Jacksonville with their secondary depleted. And then Justin Jefferson, this dude has been absolutely amazing right now. 25 targets in the past 2 games, 26 and 30 DK points respectively in those past 2 games, and just been, just explosive as a rookie here. And the way we attack Tampa Bay is through the air. Carlton Davis, I don't think he'll be seeing him, and so he should be able to eat in this matchup here at 7,400. Like getting to some Allen Robinson without Bradley Roby out there. This Houston secondary is not going to be able to stop anybody. It's going to be Vernon Hargreaves and Phillip Gaines and Eric Murray. Thank you. Can I have another with Allen Robinson there? Robbie Anderson is interesting. I'm curious to see where his ownership lands because of these guys on Carolina who are going to be out 6,200 there going against Denver. Game's not sexy, but he could end up being the guy. Corey Davis, how is this dude still priced under 6K? It is absolutely unbelievable what DraftKings is doing. I mean, this is the one mistake that I feel like they continuously keep making all year. He went for 19 DK points, got priced up from 4,800 to 4,900. Then he got 10 and then was priced up again to 5,100. And then he goes for 38 and only gets priced up 600. Like this dude should be well into the mid 6K range with the upside he's offering. Matty, you've been beating the drum all year for Corey Davis. I don't want to take any steam away from what you have to offer, but he's just been so explosive in what he's offering. And I don't see myself, definitely for cash, you're not building a team without him at this price tag. And it's just going to be hard for me to not want to just plug him in and play him, as he's just arguably the most mispriced receiver. I was doing this with Deontay Johnson for the Steelers as they kept keeping his price tag down, and he was still, seeing all the targets. So definitely love him. Scrolling down here as I'm thinking of other guys. I mean, I don't really like Kuti, but I'll play him on my Deshaun Watson teams that I'll be sending to you guys as I build those. Scrolling down here, I thought about, can I trust getting to some Tyler Boyd here if T. Higgins misses? He's 4,900. It's just Brandon Allen, hard to trust. Denver guys I do have interest in, and the one is Jerry Jeudy. If he's going to see Dante Jackson, you're kind of looking at it. And last week against KC, only those 4 targets, only 1 catch. The game logs haven't really been there, but we know that Drew Lock kind of just has DGAF mode, and you're looking at 4-7 in this range here. And I know the game doesn't really jump off of the page, but I do think that Jerry Jeudy kind of has some upside with that. Tim Patrick is 4,200 too. I mean, that's kind of where I was just kind of going with it. I kind of do. I don't fall in the same line of you, Matty. I think if those guys are still missing, as long as Bridgewater's out there, maybe we can get some points scored in this game. And again, if Carolina is able to take control, Lock can. He always is throwing. So whether that's throwing to the other team or throwing to his, I do have some interest in those guys. Dante Jackson's been a good matchup. And then I will unfortunately be going back to the well once again with Valdez-Scantling. 2 deep passes that he saw last week, didn't convert them, but he is getting the deep targets even with Allen Lazard back. And if those convert, we know what he can do. Love him on game stacks in that game. Kev, talk to me, or Michael Gallup too at 3,800. I was going to touch on him because I do like him if I have to go cheap at wide receiver. Kev, talk to me, man. Where are you at with wide receiver this week? How you feeling?
I mean, I'm pretty much just stacking up, quarterbacks that I talked about. I mean, I think that that's pretty clear. If I'm playing Mahomes, I think you go to. I mean,
Kev,
yeah. Hold on, I have to take care of something. I just got a text. Hold on.
Oh, okay. No worries. Matty, I'll go to you, man. How you feeling about wide receiver position?
Yeah. So I'm just gonna, kind of piggyback off what Kev was about to say. Is he was just gonna stack up his wide receivers with his quarterback. So if you're playing Mahomes, you're obviously gonna pair him with Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, because if Mahomes is smashing, it's a good possibility that those guys are going with him. I mean, I guess you could throw in a Sammy Watkins. Like if Mahomes throws 5 tutties, you've got. I mean, Watkins is going to be on the field, so I think he's interesting for tournaments. I don't really love him as much as I normally would on a Mahomes week because the outside corners are much better for Miami with Byron Jones and Xavier Howard than the slots, and we know Tyreek. He runs in the slot, but they will mix Watkins in the slot occasionally too. So I think that he's very interesting. He's cheap too. So it's going to be hard for me to get away from the Bucs wide receivers. They're too cheap for an offense that's throwing the ball close to 70% of the time in one-score games over the last month. I mean, Evans, we know he's banged up, dealing with a hamstring issue. He's not even practicing. If he were to miss, obviously Godwin becomes the alpha. Him and Antonio Brown. I mean, why is Antonio Brown $5,500? Like, I know he hasn't smashed yet, but this is the same thing with Corey Davis. Like, the metrics are there. He's getting the workload other than the last game that he just played in. In the first 3 games, he was seeing like 24% of the targets, and then he just had a down game last week. So I think Antonio Brown is one of the best wide receiver plays, point per dollar on the slate. I planted my flag on Corey Davis last week, and I'm going to plant it again on Antonio Brown this week. I mean, AB looks like AB out there. Like, he's explosive. It's just Tom Brady has not been hitting him with passes, accurate passes. So we'd be having a different conversation if 2 weeks ago, that long pass to AB on prime time, which was ended up like a foot past his outreached arms, if he caught that and housed that for like a 60-yard tutty or whatever it was. So I like him a lot. And, every single week, man, I'm going to keep pounding the Corey Davis drum until I'm blue in the face. If you were to just take away the names and compare AJ Brown to Corey Davis, they are literally the exact same player this year. Right. Brown has 72 targets. Davis has 70. Their air yard share, Brown has 34%. Davis has 34%. Target share as a whole, Brown has 24%. Davis has 23%. It's like, these guys are an identical player, and you've got to pay $2K more for AJ Brown than you do Corey Davis. Right. And they're playing Jacksonville. Like, their matchups keep getting easier. Last week was the Browns, and I was like, this is one of the easier matchups they've got all year. And now they're playing Jacksonville. Like, 5,700 is way too cheap. Corey Davis and Antonio Brown, I'm going to live in that 5 to 6K range at wide receiver this week. I don't think you really need to get cute, man. I think it's a week where there's going to be some nuclear games. Sammy Watkins, 4,900 is probably among the cheapest that I'll go. Mike Williams at 4,700 against Atlanta. That's very interesting in a game stack there. I like that one a good amount. Just because Mike Williams, any given week, he can go out and catch 4 passes for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns, just because that's the nature of his game. So he's always got that high ceiling. And give me a high ceiling at low ownership and a low price. So I do like him. I think that's about it for me in terms of value. I know Gallup might get some steam this week, especially after his big game, which our boy Debro, I know he would have talked about Michael Gallup. He sent me a laundry list of things that he liked with Gallup in my message with him earlier today. So he is on Gallup. I don't know if I'll end up there. I don't know if I need to end up there, like salary for me. Like, there's just so many guys in this 5 to 7K range at multiple positions that I don't even know that I need, to go swimming with the punts. So,
yeah, man. And even then, like, as we alluded to at the top, I mean, on a 13-game slate, how many people are going to do that? Like we're talking about, Matty. I mean, I have to reel myself in, because I come up with my, I have my spreadsheet and I come up with my player pool, and I feel like the guys that I build around, and I have to go through and kind of, in my multi-entering the 20 max teams, I go ahead and say, okay, like, I really want Tannehill teams. I really want, exposure to some Mahomes teams, some of these guys. And I put those together with the guys that I would stack them with. And I kind of leave slots open to kind of plug and play some of these other guys that are kind of in the pool that won't work out. So to kind of hinder myself from taking too many Michael Gallups or whatever, if I kind of get on a guy like that, or too many of these other one-off guys that we kind of talk about, and kind of just see where builds land me. But it really comes down to, I think, the game scripts and the games that you are attacking this week. I mean, you really want the lineups to tell a story and not just kind of have a ton of guys from all over the place. I mean, that's where I feel like a lot of us can get tripped up. I myself can get tripped up in that too, especially last week, where I was kind of just, I was able to break even, but I was still taking guys from scenarios instead of just coming up with game scripts and games, just loading up on those, because that really is what I feel like pays off in the long run. Yeah, I mean, so Matty, some of these guys, like, like Jerry Jeudy, as I talked about, like I wouldn't play him like outside of having a lock exposure team. I mean, even Robbie Anderson, I'm not going to play him unless I can talk to myself about the lineup and where, Denver's forcing Carolina to have to put up points. Guys like outside of Sammy Watkins, like if you want to play some McCole Hardman and kind of want to bank on a touchdown going to one of these other guys for Kansas City, you want to make sure that you kind of talk yourself into a scenario there. I do want to talk about Mike Evans here for Tampa Bay in that game against Minnesota. I mean, 6,600 for him. And I know he's having a rough year, and him and Tom Brady haven't been on the same page, especially in that KC game. It was just, all over the place, but they've had some time kind of to recuperate and kind of get back into the fold here. And his, 26% red zone target share that he's seeing, and I think he's third. The share is like 7th or 8th, but the actual targets that he's seeing, I think it's 18 or whatever like that inside the 20, is third. And so how many times do we have to watch these Tampa Bay games? And when they get down there, I mean, Brady is just looking for Mike Evans every time. It's just like, okay, get the mismatch on him. And that's where we're going. And that's why Evans has been putting up these logs of scoring 1-2 touchdowns in these games, because when they get into the red zone, it's like, if they're throwing the ball, it's most likely going to Mike Evans. The same thing with Adam Thielen there in Minnesota. So if Mike Evans is out there and playing, I love getting to him in this game environment here at 6,600. I think he'll kind of go overlooked, and the more that he's on the injury report, I think that'll get people on Chris Godwin, who I think is in a fantastic spot himself too. And I would definitely love playing him if Mike Evans was out. But with Mike Evans in, I think I would probably lean him over Godwin just because of that red zone role.
If Evans is in, you definitely play Mike Evans. I mean, wasn't it the Rams game where they went combined for 100 points or something ridiculous 2 years ago when Evans was listed as doubtful the whole week and then he played? Or one of them, I can't remember which. I think it was Evans. I'm pretty sure it was Evans. He was listed as doubtful the whole week and played and then went nuclear.
Was it Rams or was it that Seattle game?
It was one of those West Coast games that Tampa played.
I think it was the Seattle game that Hollister went off and they went into overtime.
Might have been.
They went nuts. But he
was listed as doubtful the whole game.
Yeah,
and
we've seen the time and time again.
And no ownership. And it's like, if that dude's playing, Mike Evans, you play him.
Right. And you're just looking at that game. I mean, that game is just reeking of points. It's going to
be low owned. I'm telling you, people are going to overlook it because they want to play they want to play Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. They want to stack LAC in Atlanta. That's going to be a popular one for good reason.
Right.
They want to play Patrick Mahomes. They want to play Russell Wilson against the Jets. I'm telling you, man, Tom Brady is going to win people a lot of money this week.
And people are going to want to go to the well because of the KC game. Yeah, I mean, even on the other side, I mean, I still think there's merit to taking a mini stack there where you take, one of those receivers in Jefferson or Thielen, take one of the receivers for Tampa Bay. Maybe you take Gronk, as we'll get into tight ends here, as that position that's ugly, and or Irv. Right, exactly.
Which is a good
kind of way. Yeah, kind of talk about a mini stack there. Yeah, I just want to make sure that I didn't know if we missed on anybody here that would be interesting. Oh, so this Colin Johnson kid, I did want to talk about him before we move on. He's 3,600, and I know we were just talking about plays that kind of feel thin, and maybe they're not going to get you to that 20-point threshold that you kind of want to be taking on GPGs. Because let's be honest, Matty, like a week like this week, tournament winning teams would not shock me seeing 240, 250. Winning first place in tournaments, because there's just so many players in good spots and so many ways to build that I think they could definitely get there. But you're looking at these games here, and 6 targets last week, 8 targets the week before that, with Mike Glennon being there, and double-digit DK points in both of those games. I don't know, man. I think it's kind of crazy.
So I will say, over the last 4 weeks, in one-score games, Jacksonville has thrown the ball 60% of the time, which ranks about – I'm not going to count it all the way down the list, but it looks like it's like in the 12th-ish range. God, you're gonna make me play Colin Johnson this week, aren't you? Let me pull up his target share of the last 2 weeks, because it looks like that's when he's really taken on a bigger role. Hasn't somebody been hurt though for them?
Well, Conley's been out. Conley's been out, but Chark's been back. Visca's been back,
and Visca was back last week too.
So I mean, and so as I say this, Matty, just to say, as I was getting to my Ryan Tannehill builds this week and kind of figuring out what I can do, and I do want somebody on Jacksonville to run it back with, and I think most people will do Robinson if they do anything. Maybe they don't do a run back at all because it is Jacksonville, or maybe they just take Robinson and hope to get the running back points there. But you're looking at a Colin Johnson at 3,600, and then, okay, I have my run back, and then I can think about other spots of where to go to. He's 3,600.
I actually like it. Over the last 2 weeks, he's seen obviously the 14 targets, but it's been 33% of the air yards and 20% of the target share. You look at Chart over the same 2 weeks, 38% of the air yards, 17% of the target share. And so, their offense kind of has been a little bit spread out, but I mean, you're not paying a premium for this guy, and you're getting it. I mean, it really has been a backup connection, right, between Glennon and Johnson. Those guys, he practices with him on the practice field every single day of the year. So that's his guy. It seems like he trusts him.
And I couldn't do it outside of the Tennessee stacks there at all. But I just think it's just such an easy way, because people will. We were talking about this with Derek and Chad, and he alluded to Chark, and I was kind of building around with Chark too, and I was just like, damn, I don't really want to spend the 5,300 on Chark here just to make it a run back. Who else is here? And I'm looking at. I started looking at Keelan Cole, as we talked about that boy so many times, and he's paid off dividends. But I'm looking at Colin Johnson, and then I'm just like, wow, 3,600, it really allows for me to kind of do a lot else on these builds that I'm creating. So I just wanted to touch base on him because I thought that was interesting.
He's definitely interesting, and I honestly hadn't even really looked at him just because I'm like, Colin Johnson, I'm not playing him, right? But I mean, the underlying numbers, I mean, it makes sense it seems like more of a high floor play in the matchup. I just don't know. I mean, I guess he has kind of flashed 90-something yard upside, but that was the game Chark missed, I think. So I don't know what his ceiling is with all their receivers back healthy, but I think I agree. If you're going to stack that game up on the Tennessee side, Johnson would be my run back.
Yeah. And it's thin, and it might not even get there, but 20 max. If I build multiple Tannehill teams, I'll definitely be sure that one of them has a Colin Johnson play on there, just in case it hits. Let's talk about tight end as we get here, and again, just tight end has been ugly all year long, and I mean, even more so. You talk about last week when people wanted to go cheap, and I came around to the Anthony Ferkser thing just on builds and the way that was coming off, and it looked ugly there for a minute. He was able to get to 10 DK points. So, you play him at 2,500 and he got there, even if you didn't have Waller. If you built around some of these other guys, if you had Corey Davis, you were still doing all right in some things. So actually you had Corey Davis and Ferkser in cash. And so that was pretty nice there to have that hit. But, we got Kelsey at the top. I mean, Kelsey in play every time that this dude's on the field. Even more so, I feel like, Matty, as you're talking about the outside corners from what Miami's been limiting production to. Okay, so then let's just plug in Kelsey here, who is 7,400. And, I think I'm not sure how this goes, Matty, because people who didn't pay up for tight end last week and Waller ended up being the play who goes for 40, are people going to look at it now and just say, you know what, I have to find a way to get Kelsey in, because if he goes for 40 and I don't have him, I'm going to be disappointed. And so that makes me upset that Waller hit, because on a week like this, I would normally have a ton of Kelsey in that regard. But if he's going to, catch ownership and be popular as a one-off, that could be down. But 12 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets, 12 targets. I mean, the share has been absolutely incredible, what he's been doing at the position. I mean, leaps and bounds to tight end one on the season. It's just been awesome. Darren Waller will garner some ownership, I feel like, for people that missed out at 6,800. But it's one of the roughest matchups, that he could have going against Indy. I mean, the one thing we've talked about Indy being frauds here, but the one thing they've been damn near sure to do is to limit tight end production. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to be tough for Darren Waller this week. We got Hawkinson at 5K against Green Bay, Gronk at 48. Gesicki 45, Henry here, Ingram, Tanyan, Fant, and Goddard are your 4K and above tight ends. I see chat kind of talking about Jonnu Smith there as we're talking about the KC, as we're talking about the Tennessee Jacksonville game. He's back now. He's 3,900. What's his ownership going to be? Is he going to go under the radar? He could definitely be interesting, as we saw him have a pretty, decent role before he got hurt there against Baltimore and Indy. 2 tough matchups, but still 12 and 9 DK points. And we know what his upside is. That game against Buffalo, the same game against Jacksonville in week 2, he went for 4 and 84 and 2 touchdowns. So he definitely will have a role. That's a nice little stack pairing there with him. I'm not sure, how you guys are feeling about the cheap guys, but I do like Jordan Akins at 2,900 against Chicago. I just think that this matchup is just jumping off the page of what they've been allowing production to tight ends, and especially with Will Fuller not being out there, tough matchup for Brandon Cooks. I could definitely see Jordan Akins getting run here in this game. And then another guy I think that will kind of go under the radar too is Logan Thomas. And Logan Thomas, has really he had that big game last week, just missed the 100-yard bonus against Pittsburgh, but Pittsburgh, pretty stout, and now he's going against San Fran. And if Alex Smith, I think it really comes down to how limited is Terry McLaurin going to be, because Pittsburgh pretty much erased Terry McLaurin, and then, that left Logan Thomas just wide open, and Alex was able to find him. So if San Francisco tries to do the same thing and bracket McLaurin and kind of hold on to him, then I could see Logan Thomas getting there. And he's definitely had some, high target share games of late. 3,300 there. It seems nice. So, yeah, I mean, it's really, pay up. If I pay up, I'm going to go Kelsey. And then I'll probably talk myself into some Henry on Herbert's decks that I get to. And pretty much I'll be looking at Jonnu and Akins at cheap to play for me at tight end. Kev, I see you're back here with us. I didn't know if you wanted to pick up for tight ends, or if you had any thoughts on where the tight end slate was kind of taking you this week.
I mean, I think there's a couple, like I already talked about, Cole Kmet.
That's right. Yeah.
I like him quite a bit. Like I said, he is out-targeted, out-snapped. Jimmy Graham over the last few weeks, and I think if you're running Trubisky or you're looking to pay down at the position, I think that is a place you could definitely go to as a cheap tight end. I don't know why Logan Thomas is so cheap at 3,300. If you look just even over the last 4 weeks, he is number 1 on this slate in routes run. I don't really understand it. I know he's coming off a big game, but 3,300, that just seems a little cheap. And I really don't like. It just threw me off when I saw Dan Arnold at 3,600. I know he had the big game last week, which is sad that we weren't on Dan Arnold breakout. But past that, I think the other guys, Hunter Henry, I think makes a hell of a lot of sense at 4,400 to go there. He is somebody else that has, if you look at him over the last 4 weeks, he is third in routes run. He is only capturing a 16% target share over those 4 games. But regardless, at tight end, like against Atlanta, and again that we want to target, whether you want to run. If you want to get a little bit different, and maybe if you're not running, whether it's Keenan Allen or Austin Eckler, I think you could, pair him in that game stack, at tight end at his price tag. And then, guys like TJ Hawkinson, especially again, now looks like Kenny Galladay is going to miss another game, which at this fucking point, I don't know why they don't just put him on IR. Like what are we doing? Like they've wasted and burnt like a roster spot every single week, just leaving him there and never actually doing anything with it. So, I think with that, other than that, Travis Kelce, Darren Waller, obviously, are always in play. And then Mike Gesicki against Kansas City as well at 4,500. He's becoming more involved in this offense as of late as well. And he is 7th in routes run over the last 4 weeks. It has a 21% target share in this offense. So especially without a guy like Preston Williams, he's definitely involved inside the red zone as well, goal line target. So I do think he's in play as well. In this, if you want to, instead of if you're running a KC stack and you don't want to run like Devontae Parker or something like that, I think going Mike Gesicki is something you could do, especially mainly in ones that you're not playing Travis Kelce. Because I very rarely want to run Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill together. It has happened more frequently this year, but typically in years past, they don't usually.
I mean, you can get a pretty cheap game stack running Mahomes, Tyreek, Watkins, and Gesicki. Like that's having those two sub 5K guys in that game.
Right.
It's really interesting. So yeah, I like Gesicki. He was going to be the one guy I was going to add on top of what you guys already touched on, but I don't need to run through all the same guys that you guys did.
Yeah, I think I mean really your builds will kind of dictate where you go. I know Kelce will be popular, so it'll be hard for me to kind of figure out what I'm gonna do with him in one-offs or just where I'm playing Mahomes. But I do like the Jonnu for cheap, Akins for cheap. And Dalton Schultz too. We could talk about him. I mean, he's going against Cincinnati. Been a favorable matchup for tight ends. Love what he's been able to do with the target share, even with guys like Cooper, Lamb, and Gallup being there as well too. So he's quietly, been decent. What you want from tight ends at 3,500, I could see myself playing him as well too as a one-off.
What about Ian Thomas? Without DJ Moore, possibly Curtis Samuel, I mean, they're really going to be down to who? I mean, I know it's a little bit thin, but in a game that they're, I don't know, $2,500, he's been running routes. He just hasn't been. They're obviously just not getting any targets. He has like a 3% target share over the last 4 games. But
yeah, I can't.
That game for me is just so gross. Like, I don't even know how those teams are going to score points.
I don't love it either. It was just something whenever I saw the guys that were out in that game, I just got me thinking about something like Ian Thomas, because I know he was a guy especially heading into this year a lot of people liked, but he just hasn't gotten any opportunity whatsoever to really do anything. I think he had the one game a couple of weeks ago, I think, or maybe even longer than that, maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, that they actually decided to use him a little bit. But other than that, and then we didn't mention if Kyle Rudolph, if he is out, then I like Irv Smith a lot, because Irv Smith did return to practice.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he's interesting. What's his price tag this week? 3,100. Yeah, I can get behind that for sure. Couple targets. Yeah. Irv Smith, definitely something to monitor there. All right, guys, let's move on to defense as we get ready to wrap this pod up. Thanks for everybody in the DJ Nation fam rocking with us along here as we get ready to get in the defense, build our team, close this out. So defense here, we don't have a 4K defense this week, so 3K and below is kind of what we're looking at. I really haven't done that much diving into defense, so I'm actually going to start at the bottom here, just kind of see what we're dealing with here. 2K Lions, 2,100 Jets after they fired Greg Williams there. Cincinnati, 2,300. It's been hard to kind of trust them. They haven't really been getting pressure, but they're going against Dallas. They're at home at 2,300. Dallas, again, on that same other game, they're 2,400. So those are going to be interesting ways to go. As we get up here, I mean, I'm looking at teams like Carolina against Denver at 2,900. I saw them kind of catching some steam with some people. I mean, Seattle at 3K against the Jets might have some merit to it. You're looking at not double digits, but they've had more than one sack in a couple of straight games here, now limiting some production there. Even against the Giants team, they were still able to put up 9. So if they could, have that 12-man rocking with them there at home, against the Jets, I kind of like that. The high priced is the Saints going against Philly at 3,800. Not really feeling too keen on that as they're on the road there. So defense is really kind of weird this week because you got weird spots with guys on the road here, and not really defenses that we usually lean to. I mean, I'm looking at the Titans here, 3,100 against Jacksonville, but the Titans have not been a defense that I've been even remotely wanting to play. The Colts at 3,200 against the Raiders, maybe, but I still don't know what the upside there is for them. So I'll be looking at the Seahawks quite a bit there. to play them, and I'll probably look at the Cowboys and Bengals to pay down on builds this week. Kev, how are you feeling with defense this week?
What about $2,200 Eagles?
Yes.
I mean, wow. that feels like a play to me.
Yes. I mean, right. they've got 38 sacks. Taysom Hill's outside the dome, and let's just assume that the offense gets better under Jalen Hurts. That Eagles defense is now, they're not on the field as much, basically, to where teams have better field position and having more possessions against them.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Does Michael Thomas
obliterate thunder from you there? But I was just so excited that you said that.
No, yeah, it's just that when I first loaded the slate, that was the first thing that kind of stood out to me. I was like, the Eagles' defense isn't this bad, or this bad to be $2,200. I mean, New Orleans has played well with Taysom Hill and what he's been able to do on the ground, but at the same time, like, he's still Taysom Hill. Like, I think if you put pressure on him, like, this could be the first time that we've really seen a defense really put a lot of pressure on him and clamp down on him. If this happens, I think that could be a good thing for the Eagles. And just $2,200 was too cheap. I think the other ones that really stood out to me, at least down in the cheap range, were the Broncos against Carolina. Like, I don't hate that either. They're able to get pressure on the quarterback. Their secondary struggled a little bit, but I mean, you're talking about without DJ Moore, without possibly Curtis Samuel, like, who the fuck are they going to have anyway? And so if they can build somewhat of a lead, I think that, $2,500 Broncos is another area that I would be looking to target.
I'm on them too.
And what about Giants here at 2,600 too, going against Cardinals there? They've been wanting to get pressure, here as of late, going against Seattle, Cincy, Philly, Washington. Just held Russ. And if we're not getting, the problem with me about the Kenyon Drake thing too is, like, Chase Edmonds is still going to be there. He's getting double-digit opportunities in every game, so he's not going to see volume in order to necessarily smash. I mean, he could get that unlimited production and break off a run like he did against Dallas. But yeah, I think the Giants, if we're getting Kyler Murray that's banged up, what we've seen the past 2 weeks, I think they can definitely be in play here at 2,600 at home against the Cardinals. And every week, right, for the NFC East teams is playoff week, because they're all just as bad as each other, and they're all trying to vie for this spot to get that first place there. So Giants is interesting too. I guess I'll look at Eagles too at 2,200, as I do like to pay down. That's an interesting spot there, as the Falcons were able to get 5 sacks in the 2 games that they played against Taysom. So interesting play there. Anything else?
I think Washington's interesting. 2,800 against San Francisco.
Yeah, on the road.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll probably end up with a lot of Eagles just because of how cheap they are. And I, like Will said, shout out Will in the chat. He knows that I love to pay down for defense every week. So I like a couple weeks, I think it was 2 weeks ago. No, it was last week. I played on my main team. I had the Jets defense just because I was able to fit all the dudes that I wanted to play. So,
right. Yeah. And I mean, it's just such a high variant position. I mean,
it is. Really, I mean, you look at the Patriots last week.
Right.
Scored 2 freaking special teams touchdowns. It's not even defense, right? And you get rewarded for it. So it really is a high variance roster spot to fill. So that's why I just embrace the variance. I mean, even the best defenses in the best spots, even if they give up like 3 points but don't get any sacks or turnovers, I mean, they're a low scoring defense. So you've got to embrace the turnover variance and just hope you can luck box into a touchdown somehow.
For sure, and that's why I think the Panthers will be popular as a defense this week at 2,900. Just, Matty, you're talking about that game being gross. I think the sentiment for most people is that game will be gross. Drew Lock on the other side. The team is at home. More opportunities for him to throw. More opportunities for him to make mistakes. I could see them catching steam here as we get into the weekend. All right, guys. So that is the Week 14 main slate breakdown there. As we get in, let me pull up the huddle for us here, the $5 single entry, as we get ready to build this team that we are doing. Shout out to everybody who's been rocking along with us in the chat, listening to us on the podcast streams. Guys, if you're listening on your podcast software there. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel there, whether that be on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or whatever you guys have that you're listening to the pod. We appreciate it. Just subscribe to the channel. We appreciate that. And make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Allen Robinson signed jersey giveaway happening on December 27th. To anybody is eligible who subscribes to the channel, that will be how you're eligible to win. And also you're getting the content too that we're putting out there, the Fantasy Authority TFA game day show that we have on Sundays, 10 o'clock Central Time. You can get your DFS content videos that are coming out, as well as redraft and dynasty content as we get here into the first week of the fantasy playoffs as well. So you guys want to make sure you're on the YouTube channel getting all the content that has to offer. All right, let me pull up the 5K or the 60K huddle here, $5 single entry, as we get ready to build our teams. And I'm just going to load it up. And I'm just going to start off the team. I haven't started in a couple weeks. I put in Corey Davis at 5,700 just because I just want to play Corey Davis this week. Who wants next? Kev, you want next?
Let's just go Tannehill.
Colin Johnson then is a run back.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, Colin Johnson there at 3,600 on the run back with the Tannehill stack. I don't know where I'm going, but just to kind of riff here for a little bit as I think about what my play is. Matty, how are you feeling about Tannehill there in the stacks? Are you running him with two guys on every team if you're building with him, or how do you kind of feel what his upside is with passage? Because some quarterbacks, I feel like you can play them with just one guy. They hit. That's pretty much all you need. But with others, I feel like I kind of have to have two guys to carry it on the build.
So I'm kind of glad you asked that question. So the way I approach it is, if this quarterback smashes, what's the likelihood that, like, how many guys is he bringing with him, like, based on their price? So if you look at, let's take the Falcons for example, right? If Matt Ryan smashes, we know likely one of or both of Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones get there. Right. But let's say most of it goes to Julio. You don't have to have both Julio and Calvin, and then maybe the other, maybe Julio catches two long touchdowns, and then Matt Ryan throws 4 total, and you get maybe Hayden Hurst is a random touchdown, and maybe a running back catches a touchdown or something, and then Calvin Ridley doesn't get there. Well, Calvin Ridley costs you a ton of money, and you need him to put up 30 points at his salary for him to make sense in tournaments. And then you've got Julio Jones, who obviously smashed with Ryan. So price does matter when you factor that decision in. So the high price guys, I tend to try to not jam in a bunch of high price guys with my quarterback, because the likelihood, that Ryan Tannehill is going to throw 5 touchdowns and bring AJ Brown with him and Corey Davis. And, it makes more sense to jam in guys on like a lower price stack because they don't have to do as much. And so you got the Titans, for example, Ryan Tannehill, he can go to Corey Davis, who's 5,700. You still need him to hit close to his ceiling for him to make sense playing in tournaments. But I mean, Jonnu Smith is cheap. AJ Brown, you could pair him with Davis because of how cheap Davis is.
Right.
It's like total salary allocation across those 4 touchdowns. How do you get there? And like, if a guy gets 10 points, like last week, Ferkser, he got 10 points, but he could have been in an optimal lineup because of how cheap he was, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess for me, as I'm getting to these builds, and Kev, I'll go to you because I did play Austin Eckler at the running back position instead of AJ Brown. And I feel like for me, as I'm building these teams with Ryan Tannehill, like if I have Corey Davis, I'm not going to, I feel confident in not having AJ Brown too, because I'm just saying, okay, let me get all the production from Corey Davis. But as I'm playing teams that have AJ Brown and I'm looking at, the other 2 wide receiver positions and I'm seeing Corey Davis at 5,700, I'm like, well, if I'm going to play AJ Brown, does it make sense then to hedge with Corey Davis? Because if for some reason he ends up hitting, then I want to be able to kind of get those points as well from the guy who is going off. So it's more so for me, like if I have AJ Brown, I kind of consider, do I need Corey Davis too? But if I have just Corey Davis, I don't feel like I need AJ Brown. And so that is what led me to play Eckler at the running back spot. I kind of want to get production there. So right now our team is Tannehill, Eckler, Corey Davis, Colin Johnson. We got 5,400 per position. Kev, it's on you.
I will say just two really quickly to add on to that really quickly. It's just, I feel like at least with this stack is with AJ Brown, I feel like he is more like not this year, but like Tyreek previous years, right? Where he is somebody that is not going to live off of volume. Like you're not going to get 8 to 10, receptions from him for 140 yards. He's a 4 to 6 reception guy, but can get 160 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns because his ability after the catch and stuff like that. So with that being said, with a guy like that, I would almost rather at times not stacking it. Like if I'm going to play this, I would much rather have Corey Davis, where Corey Davis is going to live off of volume. And I think in terms of how the game goes, because let's say that AJ Brown scores 2 touchdowns, but he house calls 2 of them, right? Mm-hmm. Like I feel like in the way that the game could turn out and the way the game flows, that what ends up happening there is it kind of takes down Ryan Tannehill's value a little bit because he doesn't have to do as much because they're scoring quickly, right? So he's not stacking up those fantasy points as quickly. So like for me, like if I was going to play AJ Brown, like I would almost rather play him by himself rather than playing him with Tannehill. Or play, or do the run back, depending on who they're playing on the other side, and play that quarterback instead of him. If that makes sense.
That's interesting, Kev. That's interesting. I didn't think about that.
Anyways, wait, aren't you up?
I went Eckler.
He picked Eckler.
Okay.
So Tannehill, Eckler, Corey Davis, Colin Johnson is what we're looking at. Running back, wide receiver, tight end, flex, defense. Open.
I'm going to go Jonathan Taylor.
All right. We're still rocking with our salary here. Go ahead, man.
Because I think it's a slate where the quarterback has to go to nuclear. Let's double stack him with Jonnu.
I like that. So we got Tannehill, Eckler, Jonathan Taylor, Corey Davis, Colin Johnson, Jonnu Smith. Wide receiver, flex, and defense are open, and we still have 67 left per position. So this is turning fun. Let's see what we do here. I'm going to put in Godwin just to kind of see what we do. Kev, while you were gone, we kind of talked about the Tampa Bay situation, and I really like Mike Evans the most if he's out there and playing. I just think that he'll go overlooked at his $6,600 price tag with his red zone role. But I'll build right now as if we think that he's going to miss, in which Chris Godwin would then shoot up at 6,300.
Do you like AB, Ryan?
No, because he fucked me over.
Me too. I'm right there with you. I just asked because you can go AB Devontae Adams in Eagles to end it.
Oh wow. That's it. That I do like getting to Devontae Adams or Jones anywhere that I can. So that'll be interesting. Yeah, I mean, yes, if Evans is out, I think that'll just force Tom Brady's hand to kind of get him to where that target share is. If Evans is in, then I just can't do it. I'll just let Antonio Brown beat me at 5,500, and just kick myself for not going back to the well. I think what it comes down to is that we know that Arians wants to get the ball to Evans. We know that Brady likes to get the ball to Evans in the red zone role, and Godwin just being back healthy. They've been on the same page. Like they just have been, he's been able to find him so much. And I think that Brady brought in Antonio Brown, for a reason. And I think this guy does have a role, but he just has not been looking like the first option as of sorts. I mean, he really didn't start coming along in that KC game until they were way out of it, so in neutral game scripts, I think we're still going to see those two guys plus Gronk's been coming on as of late too. So I think he's either third or fourth person in that rotation when they're all healthy. Now, Evans being out totally flips everything around. And so I'll definitely have to consider him if that's the case. But if it's Evans and Godwin, I like those two first.
We also didn't talk about Ayuk at all. He's there, 5,400. He's very interesting.
Yeah, wow.
I think him and Jameson Crowder are both really interesting, especially with Crowder now with Denzel Mims ruled out.
Yeah.
Oh, is he out?
Yeah, they said it's personal reasons. I don't know. They didn't obviously specify, but so Denzel Mims isn't even playing in that game.
My God. This is what I'm saying. Like, there's so many 5 to 6K options this week that you don't have to really go dumpster diving.
No, I mean Ayuk. I mean, you guys mentioned Ayuk. I think in the 3 games that he's played this year, or the last 3 games, or actually 3 of the last 4 games, or really, I guess you could just call it the last 4 games in a row. He scored 20. He scored 20 DK points. I mean, the one he had 19.7. So, round up. But yeah, I mean,
he's doing it with Debo out there too. Until Kittle comes back. I mean, Debo's been the very short yards after catch guy, and Ayuk's been kind of their deep threat. Like, he's got all their air yards, and I remember watching that primetime game on Sunday or Monday, whenever it was. Monday night, against the Bills.
Yeah, Monday.
I mean, Ayuk was getting deep shots down the field multiple times.
I mean, this is just stupid when you look at Buffalo, New Orleans, Seattle, New England, 20 points in a row. Dude.
He's so 20,
good. 20 points in all 4 of those games. That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's helped too that they're missing so many pieces, George Kittle and everything out. But
right.
You're right. You look at just the 5K range just among wide receivers in general is fantastic. I mean, Marvin Jones is 5,800. You mentioned Antonio Brown, Crowder, Ayuk, and then Sterling Shepard, who continues to see a lot of targets. And Daniel Jones is back this week against Arizona.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, if the 5K running backs are going to be chalky, I think it's incredible leverage to play these 5K wide receivers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, T.Y. Hilton, 5,100 against the Raiders. I mean, there's just so many different options. Kiki, which, I know last week you hated him and you did okay. But
did okay.
At 3,500. But, even Tyler Boyd at 4,900. Like, I played Tyler Boyd last week. And I know it's not, a sexy play or anything like that, but there's just so many good options this week because I just think there's so many good matchups. And
if T. Higgins is out though, Kev, he would be an awesome play.
Yeah, 4,900. I mean, he's typically a 65,
Dallas
range, wide receiver. And I get it, it's not Joe Burrow, but we saw him produce last year with shitty quarterbacks as well.
So you guys see what I mean? This slate is wild.
Right. No, but Matty, that's what I was saying.
Will taking victory laps in chat, 100% TY.
Dude, and what's crazy is the numbers against TY against Houston. I had to go back and look because I was like, what did I miss here? And his numbers against Houston have been absolutely absurd. But no, as we get back into the build, because I do want to get back to that as we're building around. But I just think that's why I'm looking at the 7K range of running back, and I'm like, how can I get 2 of these guys on my teams? Because you're looking at the high price guys, Matty, and we kind of talked about that whatever week that was when Keenan was 8K and Metcalf was up there. And it was kind of just like, if you just take a stand on not having some of these high priced receivers and just say, let me get the guaranteed production at running back that we think of and, take a shot on some of these mid-tier wide receivers, then you could put yourself in a good position in tournaments. And that's kind of how I feel like. I mean, in the 6K, low 6K range and the 5K range, like these guys can go for 25. Like it's not going to be out of the realm of possibility. And if they go for 30, like, I mean, you're going to be sitting pretty if you have like Jones who gets 30, Eckler who gets close to 30, and Montgomery goes out there and he gets 15, or Gaskin goes out there and gets 16. Drake gets 10 or whatever he ends up with. It's just like you can bank on those guys kind of hitting, what their ceilings are, but you can really get guys who have been giving you decent production at wide receiver in this range, game in and game out. So yeah, right now we have Godwin in there. We got 5,500 left. I mean, we could play around with Antonio Brown and Adams. I'm curious to see, Kev, where you think and what you'd want to do at flex.
Aaron Jones.
We better.
I'm gonna have $1 million left over.
So right now, yeah, we got 3,400 for defense.
All right, well then, hang on. We might make a swap elsewhere. I'm not leaving. I'm not.
If Evans ends up playing, that would still be 31, but we could play around with some of these other guys. I mean, we could play around with.
I was gonna say Jonnu, but that only gets us to 5,100, and I'm not. I'd rather just play Jonnu in a Tannehill stack.
What if I don't know if there's something there you'd like, but what if we swapped out Taylor for Aaron Jones and then played Eagles D, and I would still leave 7K left? Is there something there that you would like for that?
Let's see. That's a good question. Let's see. Aaron Jones. Jonnu. I got to get back to Jonnu here.
Eagles D.
Leaves us 7K. Thielen against Tampa.
I don't mind it at all.
Absolutely. Heck yeah, I'm in with that.
A Minnesota player has been has smashed, whether it's been Jefferson, Cook, or Thielen. Right? Yeah, this is kind of a crazy build too, because we can't really. There's no pivot that you could make in the flex, because both of our running backs that are in the running back position play in the late games, and then everybody else plays in the early, except for the Eagles defense also plays in the 3 o'clock.
I do like the Thielen Godwin mini stack.
Yeah, just hope that the points just go to those guys. That's bananas. So the team that we have right now, if you're following along with us, and uses up all the salary, which is not something that we usually do either. Ryan Tannehill, Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Corey Davis, Chris Godwin, Colin Johnson, Jonnu Smith, Adam Thielen, and Eagles D. Submit that into the $5 single entry there, the 60K huddle, if you guys want to play along with us on DraftKings. And that's going to be it for the Week 14 main slate breakdown. Man, it's crazy flying by here. We're episode 93 for the DJ Nation pod. Going to hit 100 as we get into the playoff shows. So we really appreciate everybody who's been rocking along with us since the inauguration pod, since we, have Matty coming on for the full year. I don't think we've really even touched on, what that's meant for the three amigos here, as we've had Mr. Matty DFS rock with us all season long. Definitely been a pleasure to have him with us. Been a pleasure to have all you guys coming in and subscribing. We love seeing the numbers. We love seeing guys who are winning off of the plays. And shout out to everybody who's been hitting us up on Twitter or hitting us up in the Slack chat that we have as well. If you want details on that, hit up Kev at FantasyRef13 on Twitter, or hit up the Fantasy Authority at FF_authority, and we can get you guys in there. You guys got any final words for the people as we get ready to sign off here?
No, just embrace the chaos this week. It's going to be wild, but it's going to be a fun slate. I think if you have NFL Red Zone, this is the week to have it.
Oh, yeah. 6 games on the afternoon slate, too.
Oh, man, is it? That. I love that.
Yeah, I think that's what I counted.
Red Zone sweat. I just sit in my same sweaty sweatpants all day long, just sweating out my teams.
Yeah, six games on the afternoon, 7 games on the early.
Oh, yeah.
Love that.
Sign me up for that. And then, if you're drawing dead after the 1 p.m. games, you just fire up the afternoon slate, right?
Right, exactly. And we're still getting, you still got Seattle Jets, you got Green Bay, Detroit, Philly, New Orleans, Atlanta, LAC on that.
I'll be playing the afternoon slate for sure.
Kev, any final words for the people there, Mr. Godfather?
Nope, just appreciate everybody rocking with us, and just wait till next week. I mean, have you seen next week's slate? Oh my goodness, that is looking amazing.
Looking forward to week 15. We ain't even started.
Next week we get a fun 2-game slate on Saturday. Excited about that.
Right. The Saturday slates,
and then we also on Sunday we get Chiefs Saints at 3:00. We get Bucks Falcons, Lions Titans, Texans Colts rematch. I mean, there's all kinds of good weeks, So but be sure to join us next week, because next week we just
I love it, Kev. Always looking ahead to the next week. Always looking to get that money any way that he can. So shout out to the Godfather there at Fantasy Rav 13, Matty Buckets at Matty DFS. Will in the chat talking about he's going to win the Millie this week. Let's get it. So Will, more power to you, man. Send us the build. I want to see what the winning Millie lineup is going to be. Signing up for myself at Ryan Alexander _W. It's the DGen Nation Pod at DGen Nation Pod on Twitter. Don't forget to sign up or subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you guys are in the running there. Allen Robinson signed jersey giveaway on December 27th. That's 2 weeks from now, coming up here. But until then, DGen Nation, get that money, and we'll see you next week for the Week 15 breakdown. Till then, peace.